Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where we try to tell you a story based on our best ability. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
No Seth today. He's off saving the world again.
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, I know, right? Thank goodness it's not me. That's next weekend. I'll be saving the world next weekend. This is the third episode of a series about birds and how great they are. No, it's about birds. It's about the human condition. It's about lots of different things. And I've been having a hard time with this, Reed. I really like this story a lot, but I've been having a hard time. The Wings of Change is what this story is called. It's about many different types of birds and the many different powers that they give people. Mm-hmm. It's about the gods up in Goldheim collecting birds and the relationship between man and gods.
Yeah.
It's about Barlow, the kind of creepy thief who
you
discovered
use the word cut purse. I think that's you see a guy in a crowd slipping up and whipping out a knife and just slipping the leather thong and sliding the purse away, the money bag away from somebody without him being noticed. It's a kind of a cut purse, you said. That just really put a strong image in my mind.
Yeah. So last time we recorded, we talked about doing story elements as well as coming up with some of the adventures, kind of Odyssey style, that Reuben would have gotten into on his way transporting these priceless birds up to Goldheim. Right? There was seas to cross, there was unmapped islands to visit and things like that. Did you think of any, Reed?
Well,
I have a couple, as well as a kind of terrifying revelation for the world. So maybe a happy ending, maybe a sad ending, maybe just an ending.
One of the things that you kind of introduced and it kind of captured my imagination was just sort of the connective tissue here. The creator had originally given these birds as a gift to one of the mortals.
Yeah.
And there was a kind of an undercurrent of petty jealousy of the created human or mortal beings on the part of the gods have much more power individually, these poor saps that are stuck here living, and they've got to, grow food, and they've got to be, husbandmen of their flocks and their herds, and just to put food on the table and get along. And, there's all this. And here you have these gods that they feel like need to be appeased, and there's that relationship between the keepers and then the sons of God are up at Goldheim and interfering, with the matters of the mortals. But they're they feel a little aced out, and that's why they're so greedy to get these birds.
Right.
And it creates this, you think back on the War of Troy, and you've got Achilles, and you've got these different heroes that are like sons of the gods, but they're interacting in the world of men, and there's the petty jealousies among the gods that that
isn't the reason why Odysseus's journey is so long is because Poseidon is set against him.
Of course. See. And I mean, the ocean can be a powerful thing, and when you're trying to bob along on the surface of it, you can run into problems.
Yeah. So did you think of any little adventures they could get into, or I have some?
Yeah. Well, what I have the answer is not developed, put it that way. Maybe I can, maybe something you do say I can hitchhike on a little bit.
Okay. I have a couple of them. So the idea is that how it was originally displayed to Reuben is, you just take this caravan up to the coast. There's a sea town there. There's a ship there. There should be a ship there, or will be. You might have to wait a month or two for a ship to be there. You take that north to this island to resupply. You might have to wait a couple weeks there. You take the same ship up north, and then you hire a caravan at that town, and then it's just like a 2-month trek to Goldheim after that, right? About a year and a half.
Wrong?
About a year and a half.
Yeah.
Right? The problem is that was a long time ago, right? And as we know from the story, all the countries of the world are kind of like congregating around this primary bird country,
Right.
right? And so his trip through the bird country to the border of the bird country is totally great, is totally as expected, right? And then we start to see the paradigm shift as he crosses over the border into the border town and then starts to move past that and sees the conditions of the roads and how things are actually a lot different than he thought.
Yeah, what passes for civilization in the border country is just a thin veneer that has clustered around and benefited from the commerce of the bird country, and beyond that, it just dwindles into wilderness and
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So he eventually gets to the town where he finds out that no ship has sailed and basically spends the next 15 years learning how from an old shipwright and old books to build his own ship, right? And then sets forth. So by this time, his name is forgotten. He's considered KIA by his country.
Yeah.
Right? And so he travels forth, and the idea is that he starts off as a man of about 25, and he doesn't get to Goldheim until he's in his late 60s, 70s, right?
Yeah.
So he spends an extended period of time on a desert planet where the only way he stays alive is sending he has a selection of these priceless birds, but he sends them off and they bring back food. They bring back little scraps of rope. I'm holding my finger out for a couple of inches, but I don't mean that. I mean like 3 feet at a time. So he slowly rebuilds his crashed ship over the course of a decade, out of that. And he turns into, so there's the story in this world of the old man, the first man to ever get the 2 birds. He turns into that kind of person, right? He turns into that person. It's a ascetic journey. It's a monastic journey, right? Where he learns to kind of, and then, then he launches out and immediately gets picked up by pirates. He feels so exultant. He gets his ship all ready. He's got all the birds are with him. He launches out and immediately pirates come and sink his ship. And he spends 3 years pulling an oar, right? For a pirate ship. All the birds scatter. And then when he finally takes those 3 years and then comes back to himself, when he finally is able to, whether he's rescued by a benevolent slave trader, whether his ship is boarded by some country and all the slaves are liberated, and he's finally put a port somewhere. But it's this really kind of, he does like all of these things, right? He lives very briefly, learning how to breed a specific type of bird over here. He's a king's consort for a couple of years. He's like all of these different, he does all of these different things, and all of them serve to kind of remove parts of him and institute other parts of him. But also everything that he goes through is put forth to sort of continually ask the question, like, is he dedicated to this? Will he remain true? When someone offers him a country for this very rare bird that can speak and seem to have some kind of intelligence, he is true. He stands true, And so finally, when he finally makes the way and he finally gets dropped off at the port on the northern continent, and now it's a 2-month journey, it's one thing I'd like to say is I think that the whole book is about someone else entirely. And it starts with they're trying to go up to Goldheim to entreat the gods for some reason. And they're forming a group of people to go up, to travel through the wastelands up to the north. And one of the people that they travel with is Reuben.
Yeah.
And so slowly in this 2-month journey, they learn about this person who has done all these things, you know?
Right.
So in kind of a way, all of history is repeating itself because the original old man went up to Goldheim, was accepted, and then came out with the birds.
Right.
Right. So this is kind of the journey that I want him to, and there's like lots of crazy things. So he always has a story. He always has there's no job too weird. There's no mountain too high, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you spent 5 years of your life on a 100-foot by 100-foot island, having birds bring you food, and all you have is the wreckage of your ship to keep you safe from the rain and the storms. Like you learn that it's okay. You can like deal with things. Mm-hmm. Things are deal withable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So by the time he gets to the place, you know, the birds that he have, it's never a question thing that the birds are the same birds. It's just, It's always the same birds. And that's kind of, I would say, kind of a mystical element about it, is that the birds aren't like dying and he's not like breeding them. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's the same ones, you know? And then he eventually gets to Goldheim. But the thing is that his entire journey there is kind of like a tribute thing to the kind of corrupt, kind of oligarchic gods that live in the north that we're trying to like receive their blessings, you know? And so he himself is kind of disgusted at the entire, at the end, he's sort of disgusted at the entire thing, you know?
Yeah. Like, whose idea was this crap show anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or like, I have no regard for the gods anymore. Mm-hmm. Like they didn't help speed my path along, you know? And there's a thing I was playing with, an idea I was playing with when it came to the story is that, in this world and in this place, it's not reincarnation, but there's like a style of reincarnation. It's like when you get to the gate, the pearly gates, you know, your soul, the pearly gates, whatever the afterlife, your soul comes apart from your body, or the energy that holds your soul together, and your soul kind of like a pearl passes on. But everything else that's left turns into, there's that energy exchange that happens, right? Yeah. Your soul kind of passes on, you know, to whatever the creator has determined. But my thought is that is where the birds come from, not the soul. So not reincarnation, but all of the energy that's left around your soul, right? The energy that connects your soul to your body is where the birds come from. Right. And so the old man with his 2 beautiful birds, who knows where they came from? Yeah. Who knows what saint, what power, maybe it was a god that birthed them. And so the whole story is in part a criticism. The whole thing is in part a criticism that people would treat the birds so flippantly, like they were meant to be kind of like revered and respected and learned from. But then they've just been kind of degraded and turned into currency. And then in like Barlow's case, turned into just, you know, just like savagery.
Yeah.
But I had this kind of idea that he would at the end be able to pass through, and maybe in fact his entire journey was kind of like seasoning.
Yeah.
So that when he does pass through, he leaves behind not his soul, but the energy around his soul that's kind of like bent into the shape of his actions, leaves behind and has the opportunity to birth a bird that is magnificent as well.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And that's one of the reasons why the gods are so jealous of the birds, why they seek after the birds. Because they can't do that, you know. They exist in Goldheim. They exist in Elysium. They exist on Mount Olympus. They can't take that ladder, Jacob's ladder, up into the place and have their actions and things, like it doesn't work. They can't go that way. But humans can. And so maybe the original purpose of Goldheim was to receive people who were well lived, and to all of the I'm using air quotes, gods' jobs was to basically have a week-long celebration where they would then walk up Jacob's ladder and they would go, but the essence of the essence of who they were would stay and be able to bless the world some more.
Yes.
And the gods through the years, some of them respect that, some of them do not. Some of them understand that, some of them do not, but that's not what it's used for anymore, you know? And the gods crave that, but they don't crave it in the right way. You know what I mean?
Right.
So anyways, that's my idea. So of it's kind of different. The Odyssey, all the things that Odysseus suffers through is they're all seen as trials, not really they aren't really refining. He's the same. The whole thing is that when he eventually goes back to his courts, he is in fact the same man.
Yes.
Where this would be kind of the opposite, is that he starts off kind of with his mind and heart in the right direction, but it takes 50 years of traveling around, of crazy adventures, of, just desolate living, to kind of strip away all the parts and turn him into somebody who, can, I don't know. That's just my idea.
Yeah, I was thinking of, while you were talking, I was thinking of what Barlow was doing at this time. And he's just going along having his own quests and his own journeys. But, the idea is you are kind of left with who you are. And when he gains the powers of adding a bird that he slaughters to his mantle, it sort of, it bend, like, use this expression when you introduced this idea of the mantle, that it kind of bends you toward yourself. So I see, like, Barlow changing as well, but for the worse.
Yeah. Or I was just, as you were talking about this, I was thinking for the worse, but think of Peter Wiggin, right? In the Ender series.
Oh, yeah.
Peter Wiggin, who was a sociopath. Peter Wiggin, who would dissect animals.
Yeah.
Right? And Peter Wiggin, who was too cruel. But what did Peter Wiggin do? He unified the world.
Yes.
Right? So almost Barlow could also maybe be bent towards, I don't know. Maybe it's best that he be bent towards himself, because it's not, it's okay to have a villain who's evil till the end. But, like, what if he becomes king?
Yeah.
Like, he gathers these things, and because he's like he's integrating himself. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, but, like, imagine if there was 100 different puzzles that all were cut to the same pattern, so you could mix them however you wanted, right? But if you mixed too much of the puzzles into the calm, serene sunset, it would eventually be a picture of a calm, serene sunset. It doesn't matter that the puzzle started out as a chaotic picture of death and destruction.
Right.
So he starts by attaching these things to him, trying to gain power through them. But the problem is that he's attaching to himself the power of saints, the power of people who rose above their position, the power of people who decided to sacrifice themselves. And he literally is forced to change from selfishness into mercy.
Yeah.
Because his selfishness takes on all of this power, but the power itself just says, I'm sorry, no.
Yeah. And he can't really enjoy the fruits of his, so let's call it, acquisitions.
Right. He
without
starts out
having some kind of order.
Right. And the guilt and the shame, and all of a sudden he starts out and he's bent very towards himself, but pretty soon he's all of a sudden kind of flirting with the anti-hero position, and then he's pretty soon flirting with the hero position, and he's a Robin Hood, and he's standing up for people but being selfish on the side, and he's like turned into someone of worth, right? And he doesn't. So later on, because the villain never, Barlow is supposedly the villain, but he never meets our hero.
Right.
Right. These are people who are dealing with two totally separate, like justice and mercy and decision making on two totally separate planes of existence for all intents and purposes. But like eventually there's King Barlow.
Yeah.
Right? And he doesn't talk about the past, you know. He doesn't talk about it, and it's like this constant thing, you know. And then the story should end with the bird that leaves Goldheim after our hero leaves flies all the way after all these years. You know, this has been over 50, 60 years, all the way to Barlow's door, you know, to the window of Barlow's mansion, of his palace. And then Barlow sees it and then makes his decision that he should set out to Goldheim.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of like, did you ever read Lilith by George MacDonald?
Yep.
It was a weird one,
yes.
right? But it was kind of like purgatory. And that's the thing I was thinking about, is that what if that's what this is? What if this is the process of sanctification, right? The process of sanctification, really. It's the afterlife. That's what this is. And each person who's been through it, because I don't think the argument is true, but you could make the argument that like the world we live in right now is the afterlife. We're all dead. Right? Because of the sin of Adam, we've all died.
Yeah.
Right? And now we look forward to those who died before us, right?
Right.
The apostles, Christ, the saints, the people in the Old Testament. We look forward to those people, and those people, the energy and the power of those people's prayers and convictions and the reality of who they are come and minister to us now.
Yeah.
And all that we can hope is that we can make the journey with their guidance to the end place. And then maybe once we've passed over to that place, send our energy back through the Holy Spirit, through God. You know, I'm not trying to say anything weird, so they were dead the whole time.
Oh,
what do you think?
That's pretty cool. You know, okay, here's one of the aspects one thing that came up in my mind, you brought up Lilith. C.S. Lewis wrote an absolutely wonderful book called Till We Have Faces. Have you ever read that?
I have started it.
You know, and it's this king, a beloved, benevolent ruler, but he doesn't have sons. And he's got an older daughter who's very capable and very smart, but plain. Not much to look at. And early on, she took to wearing a veil. So you could, a gauzy thing that she could see through and function just fine. But it just took the pressure off because she just didn't want to deal with being rejected because she was kind of gawky looking, you know?
Yeah.
And she had a younger sister that was beautiful, and she kind of became the protector of this younger sister. Well, she came up against the capriciousness of the gods, and this beautiful god had kind of what with the Ungit and the cult of the different religion. You know, the younger sister was sacrificed to this beautiful god, and she was bitter about this. You know,
I would be. Yeah,
yeah, and she finally makes the quest, and she goes to this place, but it's just the wilderness. It's just you know, and her sister is bewitched into believing that she's in a beautiful palace garden thing, and she has this idyllic life with her god consort husband, you know, who comes to her at night, and she just lives this, and she offers, you know, her beloved sister this great banquet, and it's just really rough, just survival kind of gatherings, you know, of seeds and nuts, and it's like what, and she's, you know, but anyway, it's the whole story is this woman's complaint against the gods, but the process is the refinement of her character to where she takes responsibility for her people and this. It's just, but that's what I was thinking about when you were explaining this process of sanctification, of how these factors will bend a person and almost in spite of themselves draw them into the divine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't like to pull pull rugs on stories like that. Just like, oh, it was all an illusion. Oh, it was just a giant matrix.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense considering like the kind of crazy way that the country is. That's if I've always imagined, I don't believe in purgatory myself, except the purgatory that we put ourselves through every day.
Yes.
The hell that we put ourselves through every
Yeah.
day. But I've always imagined purgatory as a giant city with like, it just kind of goes barren off into darkness at the edges, So everyone's kind of at each other's throats. Everyone's kind of shoulder to shoulder. There's no way to like be alone and be isolated. Because if I understand it correctly, which if there's any Catholics listening and you know more about this, let me know. Purgatory is really the place you go to like deal with it, whatever it is, whatever the sin of it is, it's purgatory is the place to like, and it's like your last chance, So that's why, as Seth was talking about how all the cities of the world have kind of centered around this city, around this country, everything else has kind of gotten dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. That's
Right.
kind of that's where my brain was going. It's like everything is centered around this city, and what are we going to do around this place? And everything is here, and that's, I imagine that in purgatory, just like in heaven and just like in hell, everything will be uniquely crafted to ask you the question, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
And I think that in purgatory, if I don't believe it, but how I understand it is that it's like every time you see someone in purgatory, it's the thought. So if you deal with pride, you always have the temptation of pride in front of your eyes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then like in hell, everything, all of your self-reliance is constantly put in front of you. And your complete and total lack of actual reliance, the illusion of self-reliance. And then in heaven, everything that you, the truth and the reality of Christ and everything that he has offered to you, even if you walk into my house in 10,000 years in heaven, there'll never be anything that you'll be like, I'm not that interested in that thing.
Yeah.
That won't exist because the horizons will be constantly, further up, further in, to quote C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
It'll constantly be opening up, and that's kind of the thought process that I got into when Seth was talking about how like the city was kind of focused, and then these birds, and they were, so everyone just used them because they were like this like resource of power, and people hoarded them, and and it was like this whole thing.
Yeah. Go on. I didn't mean to. I was
No,
about to interrupt you, but
I was rambling a little bit, so you're
well,
good.
what the thing about the birds is that they're real. They're about the real stuff. And I was thinking of, you brought up C.S. Lewis, and I had just, what had crossed my mind was there was a movie made several years ago called The Shadowlands. And it was the struggle with C.S. Lewis with his, later in life, he got married and she died of cancer, and it was bitter and difficult. And anyway, but that's not the where I was going, but that's what opened what you just said reminded me of his famous book, The Great Divorce.
Yeah.
Where I think the term Shadowlands came from that storyline where everybody is dealing with, there's a kind of a thinness that there's only a shadow of reality. And then they get on the bus and they come to the new place, and they step, and the grass is so real that it like goes through their shoes and hurts their feet. It's like, like Aslan's country, go higher up and further in. And the higher up you go and the further in you go, the more real everything becomes. Yeah. And it's like even our capacity to imagine what is the real is just dwarfed by experience what is real.
Yeah, it's one of those non-Euclidean things that he uses in that, where they get in the last book, the last battle, they get to the garden, the original garden that was in Narnia, and Lucy notices that as she looks through the garden, that all of Narnia is actually in the garden as well.
Yes.
So it's not like we got to the garden and there's the end. It's like you get to the place and then you see that everything is actually in that place. And the more you go into it, the more it becomes further up and further in.
And at the restoration of all things.
Right.
Yeah.
I just have this vision of like the old man going to Goldheim, right? The original old man. And in a fit of battle or a fit of convincing, right, he is allowed to make his way to the Jacob's ladder, right? To the stairs leading up. And he goes up and he talks at the door. Who he talks to, St. Peter, whoever he talks to, he is told that he can come, but he can also take this, and and he's given these two birds and basically promised that with these two, he can not only save himself, but everyone can be saved.
Yeah.
Like, here is the mission, should you choose to accept it. There's going to be more suffering. There's going to be more pain. And even these birds, the manifestation of the truth and the reality of the Creator's world, it's going to be preserved. Even though they're going to be twisted, even though they're going to be changed, even though they're going to be completely different, people are going to use them in ways that no one likes, it will still happen.
Yeah. Yep.
Bum, bum, bum. That's your theological podcast for today. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better, a storytelling podcast where we also discover things about our hearts while we talk about stories. I hope you guys like this episode. I hope you guys continue to listen. We will be next week, Reed and I, hopefully Seth will be back from saving the world by then. We'll be here talking about what we thought about the story, maybe getting into some more opinion-based theological thoughts. If you think that we are total numbskulls and don't know anything about Catholicism, you are correct. Tell us everything we don't know about purgatory. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or ask to come on the episode and you can educate us. We'd love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Twitter at @getsbettercast and tune in next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.